Welcome back, guys. How we doing? How we feeling? Super stoked to have you here for chapter number dos. And in the first chapter, we discussed what branding is not, and we also explored a little bit about what a brand is. In this chapter, I want to take a deep dive into why branding is important. And without further ado, let's hop into it. The first step in branding and what makes it super important is the first pillar. And the first pillar is all about building trust. Now, in today's day and age, we live in this information-rich society that constantly demands our time and attention. Now, what do I mean by this? What is an information-rich society? Let's take a step back and explore that a little bit. Think about it this way. You've got Times Square, for example. There is information overload in Times Square. Have you been to Times Square? When I was there, I was like, what? I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off, just trying to consume all the different content that was there. On top of that, you can think about all the various YouTube videos that are uploaded every single day, week, month, etc., talking about all the different features and benefits that XYZ product offers. Now, because there's all this information that we're constantly being bombarded with, it's taking a lot of our time and making us incredibly sensitive to where we focus our attention. And what's more is it feels like almost every single year, every single brand is just adding more products and new features to their lineup. This additional amount of extra stuff is creating consumers that are less willing to spend their time comparing features and benefits. What does this actually mean, or why is this relevant? Well, it's relevant because if your brand is leading with, hey, we have these incredible features and these incredible benefits, come buy our product, it's not gonna work. And the reason it's not going to work is because I, as a consumer, and yourself as a consumer, and every other consumer out there, they don't have the time to sit there and compare the features of this product and the benefits of that product. To compensate for all of this clutter that is continuously added to the marketplace year over year, consumers have started using symbolic attributes to influence their buying decisions. Whoa, what are symbolic attributes? I've never heard this term before. Well, symbolic attributes are pretty simple. It's things like what a product looks like, where it's sold, its reputation, and its effect on the customer's social status. Now, why are these different things important? Well, think about it. If a product's got a great reputation, and I just have heard that ABC product or ABC company has this incredible brand with a great reputation, I'll be like, yeah, I'm buying that product all day. Alternatively, you've got the customer's social status, right? If I buy Gucci, all of a sudden I feel like I'm a part of this bigger, more important social status, and that's a reason for me to buy Gucci. These are just some of the symbolic attributes that consumers lean on when making their decision as to whether or not to buy your product over the competitors. Standing out among all of the brand clutter that exists is extremely, like super duper hard. And in today's day and age, one of the only ways to be the brightest, shiniest brand is to be first to mind and compelling enough to influence your target customers to purchase your product over the competitors. Now, standing out among the galaxies of brand clutter, and literally it's galaxies, right? There are tons of brands everywhere, and there's tons of products and features and advertisements and special offers, and you get the point because now you're overwhelmed experiencing the clutter of brands. There's tons of them littering the market. And in today's day and age, the only way to be the brightest, shiniest brand is to be compelling enough to influence target customers to purchase your product over the competition. Now, I get it. You might be stumped thinking, how do we do this? And the way in which you become first to mind with your customers is through the building of brand trust. And brand trust comes from design. Design being the stepping stone, a really crucial one in the trust building process. Great design influenced into a brand flawlessly, it's going to build incredible amounts of trust. Alternatively, horrid, like bleh, poorly executed, terrible, disgusting design, it's going to sow the seeds of distrust. And what happens if we have distrust? Well, we have customers flocking to our competitors, the opposite of what we want. However, if you use good design that makes the product appear more professional and aesthetically pleasing, well, now all of a sudden you've got my attention as a consumer, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, this brand seems a lot more legit or more trustworthy than this brand over here with the horrible design, right? Avoid puke design and focus on exciting design that feels professional and aesthetically pleasing. And next thing you know, you're going to start to build brand trust. Now remember that brand trust and the amount that a brand creates directly determines who buys your products over the competitors. Okay, back up, unpack that a little bit. My brand has a ton of trust. So now all of my target customers, what are they doing? They're telling all of their friends, hey, ABC company and their brand, dude, I've used them for X, Y, and Z, and I love what they do, and their product works or their service works every single time without fail. I love them. So when you have that brand trust, you have customers that are telling their friends. The same thing is actually happening when you have distrust amongst your target audience and your brand. Alternatively, they're not raving about how great your brand is. Instead, they're telling the world how terrible your brand is, which is decreasing the total amount of customers that are interested in your brand and ultimately resulting in less sales, which then leads to less revenue and ultimately could lead to your brand being put out of business if the distrust is so bad that nobody is buying from you anymore at all. What about those people that are going, I always, no matter what, without fail, look at every single little itty bitty product, feature, and benefit before making a purchase. I do my due diligence. Those people are definitely out there. However, it's certainly not the majority. But keep in mind, at some point throughout the purchasing timeline, almost everybody's going to do this, but they're going to engage in this feature benefit comparison after they've already identified with a particular product that they think might be a good fit for them and their needs. If I have a bunch of products in the marketplace, chances are there's going to be one that just speaks to me. And when I find that product that speaks to me, I'm going to go, oh yeah, that's a good fit. I like that product or I like that brand. So I'm going to take some time to compare these features and these benefits to this other brand that I kind of like, and then make a decision between the two. This is where the personification aspect that we talked about in the previous module becomes extremely important, right? If I have a solid understanding of my target customers and audience, well, then all of a sudden I can easily make design decisions that will help personify the brand in a way that it will become relatable to my target audience. And now all of a sudden my brand's out there in the market with all the other brands. It's kind of a sea of brands. And then I've got my customers and they're like, oh, that brand, it feels like me. And now all of a sudden they're picking that brand and maybe one other brand that has a similar personality to your brand, and then they're comparing the product, benefits, and features. So start by becoming relatable to your target audience, then talk about your core features and benefits, and help inform the customer so that they can make the best buying decision for themselves. So now that we've taken a deeper dive into why customers will typically choose the brand they identify with most before comparing features and benefits, it's important to note that customers won't always pick the brand that they identify with the most, and it's important to have workarounds to this type of problem. What is one of the best workarounds to customers who are just sort of picking at will the brand that they're going to go with? Well, if you've got a customer base that isn't really taking a deep dive into product features and benefits, then the alternative approach here is to give your audience an irrefutable reason to choose your brand over the competition. And when you do this and give your customers a irrefutable reason as to why they should pick your brand over the competition, it creates a unique opportunity for you to sell them your product. Let's actually take a deep dive into Lego and how they use some of these techniques that we've talked about in the last couple minutes to take their brand to the next level and grow Lego into ultimately the Apple of toys. It all comes back to that thing that we talked about earlier, trust, brand trust. And how does Lego, one of the most trusted brands in the world, actually go about creating trust? First, let's start with their logo. Notice how they use these really big, round letter forms. These shapes, they're relatively playful, and they suggest that the company has this youthful personality. Now, there's two ways in which you could go about building trust with your logo. You could take a very corporate, staunch, sort of like lawyer approach, and that would feel maybe solid, firm, grounded, like, yes, we are a trustworthy brand. Alternatively, you could take a little bit more of a relatable and playful approach, and that'll also have a similar effect to the more corporate, staunch approach. Both are going to build trust. It's really just the execution that matters at the end of the day. Because ultimately, who finds playful and not too serious people untrustworthy? Almost nobody, because they're relatable. And because they're relatable, you feel like you can connect with them, and in turn, you trust them. Let's explore the use of color in Lego's logo. First, let's explore yellow, right? Now, this kind of harkens back to what we talked about in the previous module when we were exploring the corporate identity system and looking at color palettes and color psychology. Lego is using yellow, which suggests this feeling of friendliness and happiness. Alternatively, their use of red suggests energy and passion, both colors that get customers excited and start on the brand trust building process. Okay, we've looked at color. Are there any other elements of design that Lego is using to build trust? Absolutely there are. Take a look at this ad from Lego. Now, it's obvious that they're leaning on the reputation that they've built for themselves over the years. However, everyone who's ever played with Legos, and I mean everyone, myself, the toddler, the grandpa, Anybody who's played with Legos, they keep playing with them well beyond their teens and potentially even the rest of your life if you're a super fan. Now, how does this ad build trust? First, they start by positioning the product as timeless. Then they try to persuade the buyers that the purchase of a Lego kit is a gift that really can't go wrong. So now all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're this timeless brand, we've been around forever. That means we have a lot of experience. And because we have a lot of experience, we can tell you with confidence that purchasing a Lego kit for your son or daughter this Christmas is going to be a gift that will not go wrong. There you go. That's kind of an example of how they're using messaging to start the process of building trust. When it comes to the design of this ad, look at how Lego's using this geometric text, right? It feels solid. It feels grounded. And now think about how these solid and grounded characteristics can be used to promote trust. Touching back on the messaging side of things, look at Lego's tagline in this ad. Lego, the thoughtful toy. Okay, interesting. What does that really have to do with the trust building process? Well, take a step back at it and look at it from a bigger picture and you'll think to yourself, oh, actually that's a pretty interesting comment or an interesting tagline on this ad, because what brand that is thoughtful is also untrustworthy? Probably not a single one. There you have it, guys. That's a deep dive into brand trust, how to build it, and why it's important in the brand creation process. Up next, we're going to move away from the pillar of trust and take a deep dive into brands as tribes. Welcome back, guys. How we doing? How we feeling? Here we are in part 2, chapter 2, module 1. And in this section, we're going to be exploring brand tribes. Now, what are brand tribes? First of all, chances are, if you're just starting out making a brand for the first time, you want your brand to be for everybody, because you think that if you have this brand that's for everybody, it's going to be more sales, more customers, and increased revenue. Okay, not really the case. In fact, the harsh truth is no brand is for everyone, not even toothpaste companies like Colgate. Wait, what? I thought toothpaste was totally for everybody. No. Back up. Think about this. There are a dozen toothpaste companies. You've got Crest, you've got Colgate, you've got Scope, you've got Tom's, you've got Hello, and those are just a few. Which one are you buying? Most likely the one that you're buying is the one that speaks most to your personality, and that goes back to the conversation we had in the last part of this chapter. On top of that, you're not only likely to buy the one that most speaks to your personality, but you're also likely to buy the one you have the most trust with. And which brand of toothpaste do you have the most trust with? Probably the one you've been using since you were a kid, because you've just been using it so long. They're like, yeah, it works. I trust this brand of toothpaste. I'm going to keep using it. But what does all this have to do with branding and tribe building? Now that's where you might be wondering or thinking to yourself, how can you attract more customers so that you can increase sales and then, of course, increase revenue? Well, the way in which you do that is you start by creating a brand tribe. How do brand tribes form? Well, brands that form successful tribes know that it is important, or at least a primary mission for them, to focus on making the customer feel like they matter and belong within their community. What does that actually look like in practice? It looks like creating an incredible brand experience. Remember how in the previous chapter of this module we talked about brand experiences and how Starbucks provides you with incredible customer service and you walk away feeling great, or Apple provides this insane unboxing experience that makes you feel special as a customer? Those are opportunities to create incredible experiences that are memorable for the target customer. And when customers have that memorable experience with a brand, they feel like they matter and belong within the community that the brand has created. Brands that end up doing this long enough, providing incredible customer experiences, and are also able to find a way to scale it, end up creating their own brand tribe. And once you have this brand tribe, you have this world filled with loyal superfans. Loyal superfans, they don't matter at all. Just kidding. They totally matter. And the reason they're great news for a brand is because they're going to increase sales, which is going to increase revenue, and also chances are to lower your marketing costs. Why? Because you're going to have a whole slew of people that are telling all their friends why they should buy your brand and what a great product or service it is that you're providing. But what about those people that are like, aren't generic brands meant for everybody? Like Great Value from Walmart? Dude, that is meant to be for every single person in the whole entire world. Not quite. Generic brands are a unique customer persona with its own brand tribe. Now, one trick to attracting more customers for longer at a higher price is to identify the brand tribe that you want to create and then lean into it. This goes back to what we talked about in the last couple chapters of this course. And that is that you've got to have a brand that understands and knows its target audience, because when you understand and know your target audience, you can create a persona or personality around your brand that is relatable to your target audience. And when you're able to create that relatable personality, you're able to connect with customers on a deeper level. And then all of a sudden, you've created a connection that allows them to become interested in your brand. And because they have interest in your brand, they're going, oh, I'm willing to give this brand a try. And then boom, they give your brand a try. They have an incredible customer experience, and the rest is history. You're attracting more customers at a higher price for longer. What's more is that when customers clearly define who their brand is for, not only are they going to make customers feel important, but they're going to make customers feel like they are a part of something bigger. And what happens when you have customers that feel like they're a part of something bigger? It goes back to what we just talked about a few seconds ago. They feel like they're important, they feel like they matter, they feel like they're a part of this greater thing, and now all of a sudden they're super loyal and ultimately end up becoming super fans. But back up, what happens if customers don't have this experience? They don't have an experience that makes them feel like they matter. They don't have an experience that makes them feel like they're a part of something bigger. They just don't have a good brand experience in general. Well, here's what happens, and it's kind of scary. What happens is customers leave your tribe. So now all of a sudden your tribe gets smaller, which means the target audience that you're selling to gets smaller, which means the number of sales you can make gets smaller. Case in point, the customer leaves the brand tribe. And what do? They go to a new brand, probably your competitor, because they feel that your competitor and the personality of their brand represents them better. Long story short, your customers are going to go with a brand that fits or feels most like them and their personality, aka customers choose the brand that is most relatable. Now let's take a deeper dive into this and explore an example. Check out these toothpaste brands. We talked about toothpaste earlier. Why not continue the trend? Right? And you might be thinking to yourself, what does toothpaste have to do with branding? I don't care about toothpaste. Bear with me. So first up, we've got Aquafresh, right? Observe how Aquafresh has this classic sort of generic feel about its brand, and then think about who that is targeting, right? They're targeting a general or generic customer persona that's probably a little bit more price conscious, right? This customer persona doesn't necessarily care about having the fanciest, schmanciest toothpaste in the world. They are more concerned probably with just brushing their teeth and getting the job done at a fair or reasonable or hopefully affordable price. Alternatively, check out this company called Hello. Hello uses this much more earthy, minimalist, youthful approach to their design. Chances are those people are a little bit more environmentally conscious, and because they're environmentally conscious, they're probably saying, yeah, you know what, I don't mind paying a little bit extra money to, one, have nicer toothpaste, but also help make the environment a little bit better and leave a smaller carbon footprint. So those are just two examples of how toothpaste companies are using branding to create a personality that customers can connect with, which then in turn is giving these companies an opportunity to sell their product to their target audience. There you have it, guys. That's a deep dive into what brand tribes are and why they're important. Up next, we're going to explore brand value. Just forget for a second the fact that brands are shaped by customers, not the company. The deal is, measuring brand value, it is super duper extremely hard thing to do. In fact, companies everywhere, since their inception, have been trying to place a dollar value on their brand. You've got Nike out here saying that their brand is worth X. You've got Apple saying that they're $1 trillion brand and they're the richest in the world. And of course, you've got Amazon competing with them saying, hey, our brand is, worth X amount of money. There's even agencies like Interbrand that are actually releasing yearly lists of the world's most valuable brands. That's how important brand value is to companies like Apple, like Nike, and even smaller businesses. But here's a crazy fact. This might even blow your mind. And that is how rarely companies list their brand's value on their balance sheet. Hold up, bro. I did not sign up for a finance class. Look, bear with me. Finance and branding, there's a little bit of an intersection. Here's why. And the reason why branding becomes relevant in the world of finance and finance in the world of branding, and why there's even a relationship at all between the balance sheet and a brand, is because brands, without even listing their brand value on that balance sheet, are using their perceived brand value as a tool to justify prices, price deals, and excess damages. Now you might be thinking to yourself, earlier you said customers define the brand's value. So how could a company even possibly go about assigning a brand a dollar value if customers are the ones shaping the brand? And I get it. You might be going, yeah, okay, customers are measuring the brand, but at the end of the day, measuring this brand value, that seems like an incredibly difficult and challenging task to do. In fact, it might even be impossible. Okay, it is not impossible to measure brand value. There's one great way to measure brand value, and that's through the amount of trust that a brand creates amongst its customer base. Now, remember, what gets measured is what's going to get done. And you could be thinking to yourself, trust is this obscure metric and there's no way at all it could be measured. It's trust. How do you possibly go about measuring it? One of the most effective approaches to measuring trust is through something called the Net Promoter Score. You might be asking yourself, okay, well, what is the Net Promoter Score? And if you've never heard about it, don't worry, we're going to take a deep dive into what it is. But ultimately, the Net Promoter Score is this survey that asks customers how likely they would be to refer your brand to a friend on a scale from 1 to 10. The overarching idea of the Net Promoter Score is that the higher the score is, the more trustworthy the brand is. Now, why is this actually the case? Well, the reason this is the case is because only trustworthy brands have people that are actually going out and telling their friends and other customers how great the brand is. That's what we call the promoter. We also have passives. These are people that don't really care about the brand and probably won't go around recommending it. And then you have detractors, and these are people that vehemently don't care about the brand and will never, not a chance under the sun, go around telling the world about your brand. Now, you might be asking yourself, how does this actually work? And the way the Net Promoter Score works is it's, as I said earlier, a scale of 0 to 10 that measures how likely your target customer would be to recommend your brand to their friends. So up first, we've got your promoters. These are people who, on the scale of 0 to 10, said they would be extremely likely to refer your brand to their friends. Up next, we've got the passives. These are people who ranked 8 or 7, and they're maybe likely to recommend your brand to a friend, but it's not a guarantee. And then finally, we've got detractors, and detractors are responses between 1 and 6. These are people who are very unlikely, if at all, ever going to bother recommending your brand to their friends. Now, after you've got all these responses, you're going to want to go ahead and calculate your final score. And the way in which you calculate your final score is taking the percent of promoters minus the percent of detractors and then multiplying it by 100. Okay, I've got this score. Great, I did this Net Promoter Score. How do I use this score? Here's the deal. Write this one down. So a score of 0 to 30 is considered average. You have an average brand. It has average trustworthiness. Scores above 30 indicate that the customer has customers who are really potentially brand evangelists or super fans. These are people who love your brand. So if you've got your brand's Net Promoter Score and it's above 30, that means you have a phenomenal brand. That means you're already on track to creating an incredible superstar brand. Ultimately, end of the day, brands that provide incredible experiences are going to have extremely trustworthy brands, and the way you're going to be able to measure that is through your Net Promoter Score. And that Net Promoter Score, well, it's going to tell you, hey, this is how likely our customers are to refer our brand to other customers. The higher that Net Promoter Score, the better the customer experiences that you're providing, and the better that customer experience is that you're providing, the more trustworthy your brand becomes. Now, the more trustworthy your brand is, the more likely you are to attract more customers, sell things at a higher price, and do all of this for longer, which will ultimately lead to an increase in revenue. On the flip side, if your brand has a low Net Promoter Score, it's time to step up the game a little bit and focus on creating better customer experiences so you can have a more trustworthy brand and create more customers for longer at a higher price. Up next, I want to take a deep dive into brands and their customers. This is an interesting dichotomy, and the relationship between the two can be complex and even a little bit complicated. Okay, so companies can put all of the time, knowledge, and financial resources they want into brand development. However, the brand a company creates, it's always going to be a side effect of where it focuses its efforts and the care it gives to its departments and customers. What does that actually look like, or what does that mean in the context of brand development? So if you put a lot of care into your various departments, chances are you're going to have employees that feel empowered. And when you have employees that feel empowered, this is one of the strongest assets your brand can attain. Reason being that employees that feel empowered are more likely to create incredible customer experiences, or they're going to have a desire to please the customer more than employees that do not feel valued. Alternatively, if you provide great care for your customers and ensure that every experience they have is incredible, well, you already know the story. We've kind of gone over that in depth, but To reiterate yet again, you're going to have more loyal customers paying a higher price for a longer period of time. Now, I want to back up for a second and ask you to remember the age-old saying, actions speak louder than words, because brands are judged in the exact same way. The actions that your brand takes is going to speak a lot louder than the advertisements that you put out into the world or the events that you hold telling the world how amazing or incredible your brand is. Just remember, the actions that your brand take, ultimately, the actions that your employees take on behalf of the brand are going to be what determines the way in which the brand is perceived amongst not only your target customers, but the entire world. Making the waters a little bit more muddy is the complexity that businesses have. They have a wide variety of moving parts, and all of these different moving parts, they require daily attention. On top of this daily attention, it's most likely coming from a multitude of specialized professionals. Now, all of these moving parts with these specialized professionals and the daily tasks that come along with them, it makes it really easy for a company's brand to quote unquote just happen. What is the risk of just letting a brand happen? Well, when you let a brand happen or just kind of exist and develop in the background, you end up giving up any influence you might have over your brand. And if you remember in the previous lecture, we talked a little bit about how companies don't actually create the brands, and that is still 100% the case. Companies and their employees don't create the brand, the customers do. However, it's important not to forget that brands always have an opportunity to influence the direction and development of their brand. And avoiding the creation of a boring brand is crucial. How do you actually go about avoiding the creation of a boring brand? Because, oh my God, my brand is so boring. I need to spice it up. Okay, the solution to avoiding the creation of a boring brand is to focus on creating a brand department, or at least a team or some time that is set aside for brand development. This way you can manage the growth of your brand and be sure that you're going to influence the brand's evolution in an extremely positive way. Okay, I hear what you're saying, like it kind of makes sense, but what about that group of people saying nobody, not even me, the person who runs the craziest business in the world, has time to simultaneously manage and build a business as well as a brand? Look, those people are out there and they're definitely not wrong. Building a business with a remarkable brand is definitely time consuming and challenging. But at the end of the day, that's kind of what we sign up for when we go into the world of brand building and the building of incredible brands. However, keep in mind as you're going about building an incredible brand and recognize the challenges that come along with building a successful business and a remarkable brand, it's important to remember that customers are always going to choose the brand they trust the most. And that's why it's worth the extra effort to create a remarkable brand, because when you create that remarkable brand, you have a brand that has trust. And when there's trust around your brand, there's trust around your company and the product and services that they create. And that trust pays dividends in the long run, which is why we should be in business as companies and as brands. We should be playing the long game, not the short game. Ultimately, when customers join a brand's tribe, the brand is rewarded with customers that are not only potential super fans, but customers that are going to buy at higher prices for longer. And customers buying at higher prices for longer, well, those are customers that are helping you increase your revenue and bottom line. Alternatively, when brands are poorly managed and they refuse to adapt to the changing brandscape or refuse to implement the demands of customers or just flat out untrustworthy, they end up like Sears and they go bankrupt. So this is why it's important to always be in contact with and in communication with your target audience. If you're in communication with your target audience, you have an opportunity to connect with them and learn about what their needs, wants, hopes, dreams, and desires are. Remember all that from the corporate identity system and the customer persona section? And if you don't, go back and review it. Long story short, focus on meeting the demands of your customers and providing a great customer experience so you don't end up like Sears. Now, what would be the opposite of Sears? The opposite of Sears would be a company that listens to their customers, keeps things fresh, and is constantly innovating. Apple is a phenomenal example of this, right? Every year they're dropping a new product. That new product takes into account most of the time consideration of their customers' core needs, wants, hopes, dreams, and desires. So there you have it, guys. This is why the relationship between a brand and its customers is so important. We've taken a look at how to build brand trust in this module. We've also explored brand tribes. And on top of that, we've looked at the relationship between a brand and its customers. We've explored Sears and Apple as examples of companies who have done great jobs and maybe poorer jobs of listening to and implementing the needs of their customers. Long story short, we want to focus on connecting with our customers in a way that provides value and creates incredible brand experiences. All in all, these various elements like brand trust, brand tribes, and the relationship between a brand and its customers come together to form the importance of branding. And without these different pillars working together, you couldn't have a successful brand. And that is why each of them are important when it comes to the world of branding. Now that we've explored all these areas, I'm excited to take you guys into the third and final chapter of this module, and that is the brand gap. And in that module, we're going to be exploring what happens when a brand is just missing the mark and how you can go from missing the mark to creating a brand that's hitting the bullseye every single time and resonating with customers. See you in the next video. Peace.